God evening, brothers and sisters. I'm Brother William Valentino. Tonight, do something a little bit different. The other night, I had a conversation with a GM from another order. He asked me what is the book of law that is mentioned in Chronicles 34, verse 19 through 33. And he also asked, what happened to it? Does it still exist? Okay, the book of law is Hebrew, of course, and it's also known as the Torah. There are the 5 books of the Jewish Bible, we can say. It is that which God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai. Now, about the same time, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. It's the basis for Jewish law. But there is a dispute over this. One, there says there's 5, others says there's 24 books. But in doing some research, I found that all the different groups, which there are many, they're all divided up into regions scattered throughout Europe and wherever. And they all agree that the Torah, or the Book of Law, is consistent with the first 5 books. The other books is about 19 more books. This covers Jewish history. So it's kind of not actually part of the Torah, but it's actually a separate portion altogether. And he asked me, does the Torah still exist today? The original Torah that is mentioned, probably not. At least I can't find no reference to it. But you also got to remember, there were many scribes who reprinted another stuff by hand. One of the interesting things that if you actually had the original Torah, from 2,000 years ago, and a copy made today, it's identical. Every word, punctuation, nothing has changed. But when it was done by hand, each time a page is completed, by a scribe, there would be many working on it. It would be checked, would be inspected. And there's one slight mistake or something, it was thrown out and that page was redone. It had to be exact. Everything. So, whether or not the original Torah survives, it's hard to say. We know that in 586 BC, the Babylonians, under King Nebuchadnezzar, sacked Jerusalem. And all the treasures of the temple were sold off to Babylon. But several years or so later, the king relented and allowed the Jews to return. They returned to Jerusalem, rebuilt it, and most of the temple treasures were returned. And this is only believed to be, besides the original Torah, which was kept in a place of holies, the back part of the temple was covered with a veil. Of course, there's the same veil that when Christ died upon his crucifixion, it was ripped, top to bottom. And the original Torah was only accessible by the Pharisees, priests, and the kings of Israel. The common person, whether they knew about it or not, but they had no access to it. But they would have had access to the other books. Of course, most people were illiterate at this time. So at times the Pharisees or even the priests would go out among the people and preach to them and read from these books. But as to the Ark of the Covenant, I do believe it was returned to Jerusalem and the temple, and it probably stayed there till the time of a Jewish revolt against Rome from 66 to 73. That is when it basically disappears. There's hundreds of theories as to where it is, but there's no mention of the Romans having it. Now they took a big 7 candlestick. Then, if you look at Archititus in Rome, now he was the one who led the legions, which sacked and destroyed Jerusalem in AD 70. So my guess is that someplace underground, the Ark of the Covenant still lies, even though the Knight Templars were said to have uncovered this, along with the Holy Grail and stuff. They're during the first 8 years of existence when they were given the Temple Mount, supposedly the Temple of Solomon. But there's nothing to back it up except this, a few sentences here and there. But I do believe the Ark of the Covenant is buried someplace outside Jerusalem. Because in AD 70, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, and only left the fortress Antonia intact, because that were housed the 10th Legion. And for about 20 years afterwards, it was a death penalty for a Jew to look upon the city. And they were said, that mainly said, you cannot be a Jew, cannot be no closer than 2 miles to Jerusalem. Of course, the final deployer took place after the second revolt, or the Karbala revolt, from 132 to 185, where Jerusalem was razed to the ground and was unoccupied for a few decades before Emperor Hadrian had the city rebuilt along Roman lines, laid out. Perfect streets, straight streets and stuff, as the Roman city renamed it. Roman name, I forget offhand what the name of it is. But Jews were more or less scattered throughout Europe, or the known world at that time. But many stayed in the Middle East, in other places like Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and stuff, where they were allowed. But when the Turks conquered Jerusalem in 626 AD from the Byzantines or East Romans, the Jews returned. Were allowed to, as long as they paid a tax, they were allowed to practice their beliefs, as long as they didn't stir up trouble. So Josephus, who was who was a rabbi, a general, Jewish forces during the first Jewish revolt, claimed that his work, Antiquities, which is in 2 parts, the early history of the Jews, going from Alexander the Great and stuff up through what was called the Roman War, or right now is called the First Jewish Revolt. Okay? I lived by 22 books. So, as a priest, he would have had access to the Torah that was kept in the temple. As to the discrepancy of 2, there's no explanation for it.